If I don't take my car into the mechanic to have its oil changed, does that mean my car's oil has never been changed? No, that's something I can do myself. Here's another question. If I don't go to a school, does that mean I don't receive a full education? I received all of my education at home until I was accepted here at CVTC, and I've seen both the pros and cons of homeschooling, as well as the pros and cons of an institutional education. I've done a fair bit of research this semester on homeschooling for my English Composition 2 class, and I know a few things just from experience. Here's what I've learned about homeschooling. Homeschooling can be an excellent alternative to traditional schooling. To see why this is, we're going to look at the standard of a good education, how homeschooling fulfills this standard, and some objections to homeschooling. To begin, let's look at the standard. Here at CVTC, there are 4 core abilities that they want each student to emulate. They are values diversity, communicates effectively, thinks critically, and models integrity. This is one standard of what a good education would look like. Here's how homeschooling fulfills this standard. Beginning with values diversity. In my experience, there's no standard homeschool. Each family that I meet does things a little bit differently, so I realize that my opinions or ideas may not necessarily be the only way or the best way. Also, there is no peer pressure in homeschooling, or at least significantly less. And peer pressure is the enemy of diversity. It seeks to fit all people into the same mold. Next is communicates effectively. This is a question of quantity versus variety. There are many opportunities to socialize in the traditional schooling. However, the variety of socialization that you might experience may not be very much. It's mostly with your peers. However, in homeschooling, it's mostly interaction with families, and you get a chance to interact with people who are older than you, as well as people who are younger. I'm not the only person who thinks it's a good idea to have a variety of socialization. In an article entitled Millennials, the Me Generation, Joel Stein, an author for Times, quotes Mark Barling, an English professor at Emory, saying, "To develop intellectually, you've got to relate to older people to older things." Next is thinks critically. Homeschooling can achieve this through its independent learning. There have been many times when I would be sitting there staring at a math problem and I have no idea what's going on. And I just have to sit there and look at it and think critically to find a solution to my problem. You can learn this in traditional schooling. It's just that in homeschooling, you're allowed a little more time to work through problems. And finally, models integrity. Homeschooling can achieve this through its parental influence. A lot of you mentioned your parents in your speech of special commemoration, and you realized that your parents were your primary teachers of your work ethic as well as how to be responsible adults. Homeschooling allows greater interaction with your parents so that you can seek to imitate them. That's how homeschooling fulfills the standard. However, there are some objections to homeschooling. According to my audience analysis conducted on May 1st, 18 out of 22 of you said a lack of socialization could be a potential problem for homeschooling. However, it's not as hard as you might think to socialize when you're homeschooled. There are plenty of youth groups you can join, such as the YMCA or 4-H, which I myself attended. Also, the Coalition for Responsible Home Education, on their webpage, Reasons Parents Homeschool, cites the National Center for Education Statistics data collected in 2016 that 80% of parents indicated a concern about the environment of other schools was a part of their motivation for homeschooling. They were concerned about the socialization their children would receive at a traditional school, so they chose to withhold them from the traditional school setting. And it's not hard to see why this could be. According to the CDC's Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, Surveillance Summaries article titled Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance, United States 2015, published in 2016, it relates that 1 in 5 students were bullied, 1 in 5 had used marijuana, and 3 in 10 were sexually active. At a time when you're very impressionable, this isn't the greatest environment to socialize in. Another objection to homeschooling is education. Since your parents aren't qualified teachers, maybe the education you receive isn't up to par. According to the audience analysis I previously mentioned, about 1/2 of you said that a personalized or one-on-one education was a potential benefit of homeschooling. You realize that the more that you can fit education to your needs, rather than having to walk through the steps, you have more time to develop a better understanding of what the material is you're learning. And also, this objection is becoming more and more irrelevant with the advent of the internet and other materials, such as Khan Academy. I myself can attest to the effectiveness of Khan Academy because I used this for my high school chemistry, and when I came here, about 90% of what I learned in this class was review for chemistry. Also, there has been research done on education of homeschoolers. In the educational measurement Issues and Practice, Martin Yu, Paul Sackett, and Nathan Kunzel, a doctoral student and 2 psychology professors at the University of Minnesota, in their article, Predicting College Performance of Homeschool Students versus Traditional Students, after controlling for differences in demographics, the first-year college GPA or college retention of homeschool students was essentially the same as their traditionally schooled peers. Homeschooling had achieved the same standard of education as traditional schooling. In conclusion, homeschooling can be an excellent alternative to traditional schooling. To see how this can be, we have looked at the standard of a good education, how homeschooling fulfills this standard, and some objections to homeschooling. There's one final question, however. If homeschooling can achieve the same standards as traditional schooling, but without a poor environment, why not consider homeschooling?